I was looking forward to record today's video because this is a topic that is so close to my heart. I'm so passionate about, and I'm so happy to be able to talk about this today and bring this message out there. So this video is about animals, specifically the spiritual part of the animals and how our pets are so, how they are supporting us in so many different ways that we are not even aware of, and how we can also maybe support them because they are really there for us 24/7 and their souls are not invincible. And so today in this video, I want to incorporate my knowledge as a behavioral biologist as well as a shamanic practitioner to shed light on the causes of behavioral problems and how to also work with these problems from a shamanic point of view. As always, for those of you who are new here, hi, my name is Maddie. I'm a biologist and author and a shamanic practitioner. And on my channel, it's all about shamanism and how you can implement the shamanic methods into your everyday life and also your animal's life to make it more happy and fulfilled. I always loved animals. I grew up with animals on a little farm. We had cows, we had chickens, we had piggies, we had goose, we had cats and dogs, so everything. And I was always surrounded by animals and I just loved it. I also grew up as a single kid, and basically my grandma, she raised me because my parents were working a lot. And so I spent a lot of time at home. My grandma, she was victim of the Second World War, so she was a refugee, and she experienced horrible things in her life. And so she was full of fear, and she didn't want anything happen to me. That's why she basically locked me up in the house to make sure that nothing can happen to me. So everything, like all I could do basically every day was to go outside in the garden and just spending time with the animals. And back then I already realized that these are amazing beings. They are so sensitive, they are so empathic, they are just so loving. And it always broke my heart when I saw that my grandpa went to, slaughter one of the piggies or one of the chickens. I mean, that was just the way it was, but for me it was horrible to see that. But since back then, I didn't know anything about shamanism, that, animals have spirits or anything like that. I was just fascinated by their being and their appearance. And that's why I decided to become a behavioral biologist. So I studied biology at the University of Potsdam, that's close to Berlin. And later on, I got my PhD at the University of Frankfurt Main in Germany. So just to give you a brief summary about the study of behavioral biology, don't worry, I'm not boring you with the whole story, but just to give you an overview, because it's important to understand how during the history, scientists saw animals. They didn't see them to be these amazing spiritual beings that are, they have deep emotions and it's important to treat them ethically. That was something that came later. And even up to today, like when I studied, no one talked about animals having spirits. That's not something you would learn in the academic world. But I later on learned about this because I started researching shamanism. So when the academic world started to learn more about animals, it was more about, okay, how can we train them? How can we make them like little tricks, for example? They just saw them as experiments. There's that one experiment, you probably heard about it from Pavlov. He was a Russian behavioral biologist. And so he trained a dog while he put food in front of the dog, and then at the same time he rang a bell. So he kind of made a connection between the bell and the food appearing in front of the dog. And he eventually realized that the dog was, like his saliva was dripping because he saw the food. He was like, yum, 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 something I want to eat. And then this dripping actually started without even seeing the food, but just because he heard the bell ring. That was something he connected with. Okay, the bell rings, food is coming, food is right in front of me, so I have to drool because, I'm having my meal soon or now. And so that's how they experienced animals, just really trial and error to see, okay, if I push that button on that animal, what will happen? What's the outcome? And that was a really very practical approach to study animals. And later on, there was an American biologist. His name was Mark Beckhoff, and he was one of the first really talking about animals having actually emotions, deep emotions, like they grieve and they feel afraid and joy and happiness, or just really being sad about something. And that was when he started waking up the science about, wait a minute, animals are not just like piece of flesh and nothing else, but they do have emotions and they have very complex behaviors that we can't just, scientifically describe by observing them. There is way more going on within them. And so he started that whole movement of also more treating animals more ethical, specifically when it comes to animal experiments. And I studied all of these theories, all of this history, all of the way how you approach the animal behavior, how you record it. So I'm like a classical trained behavioral biologist on that level. And that's how I worked. I observed rabbits, I observed fish, I observed little monkeys, just from the point of view is like, okay, how do they behave in their natural environment? So I was more like a person not working in the lab, but in a natural environment to observe them, and without trying to explain why they did it, because that was the tricky part. When you try to explain why did an animal did that, was it because the animal was happy? So I observed my rabbit and the rabbit was hopping that way. I don't know why the rabbit did that. Maybe it was hungry. Maybe it was scared. Maybe it just wanted to go to the toilet. Right? So I can't look into the brain of an animal, and also the animal can't speak to me and explain. I couldn't just ask the animal, couldn't just ask the rabbit, why are you doing this? Right? I thought so. I couldn't. At that point, I didn't know better because, as I said, I was academically trained as a behavioral biologist. And so I was just observing the behavior and trying to make sense of it. Then, as a biologist, I was invited to give a talk about my PhD work of the rabbits in Hokkaido. Hokkaido is the northern island of Japan. And so I was there in the capital of Sapporo. And I gave my talk, and eventually I was invited to take part in a festival of the Ainu. And so the Ainu are an indigenous tribe, or you could say that tribe in Hokkaido. And the Ainu have the worldview of the animism. And animism means that everything has a spirit, everything is alive, everything has a soul. So animism is basically the theoretical background behind shamanism, because some people think actually, shamanism is animism is the same thing. No, it's not. It's more like shamanism is the practical approach that bases on animism. And I don't want to make it too complicated. It's just all you need to know is that the Ainu believe everything has a spirit. And because of that, you can get in touch with the spirits, with everything. So our spirit as a human can travel to the spirit, or can get in touch with the spirit of an animal, of a plant, of a stone. And so this is more the practical part, as I said, and this is what shamanism basically is. It's a word that is an umbrella word for all these different techniques where we can get in touch with the spirits. And so animism is more like the theoretical background. Okay, everything has a spirit. If everything has a spirit, then we can get in touch with the spirits. And this is more the shamanistic approach. Anyway, so as I said, all you need to know by now is that the Ainu believe that everything has a spirit. And so I was invited for a festival. They celebrated their culture. Specifically, they performed shamanic rituals and shamanic methods, and some of them involved to get in touch with animals. You can maybe believe or imagine that for me, that was really something strange. As a scientist, I didn't even believe that I have a spirit. So I was very much in my head. Everything happened here in my head. I was a very logical thinking person. I was not really feeling my body anymore because I really was detaching myself from my body. I was working my ass off as a PhD student, and I had a lot of health problems, but I didn't want to address them because I knew if I would, I have to stop working. And that was the one thing I didn't want to do. I wanted to keep going to make sure that I'll achieve the goals that I had as an academic back then. And that almost destroyed my health. But I'm just telling you because, of course, that made it very difficult for me to immerse myself into the whole shamanic work and the shamanic rituals, because In order to get in touch with the spirit of another animal, first of all, you have to believe that this is actually possible. This should be something you should be aware of, like, okay, this is actually possible. I can do that. And that's where I already had problems. That was already something that I couldn't really believe, because I don't know, I've just never thought about it, and I've never heard anyone else doing it. So it was really out of my worldview. But during the week, I got more and more curious, and I did what a good biologist or behavioral biologist does. I was observing the whole scene and the whole things, everything that was happening in front of me, without trying to judge, without trying to, putting on my own thoughts on it. I was just really like, okay, what are they doing now? What is this? And eventually, I was not only observing anymore, but I became part of it. I started being part of the shamanic rituals. I was drumming, I was singing, and then something happens that's called changing my consciousness. I changed my consciousness to a non-ordinary reality. And for all of you who have heard about shamanism, you know that this is the first step. In order to get in touch with other beings on the spiritual level, you have to change your consciousness. And when this happened, all of a sudden I was in my body again. I felt my body, and I was able to really connect from my soul to another soul. And this is where it happened. I actually started talking to the spirit of a tree or the spirit of an animal. And that was as if someone hits me with a frying pan over my head, because like, whoa, what was that? I don't know. Was that my voice? Did that tree talk to me? Does he, like, what? So I was really confused, but I was really in a very lucky position, because I had all these, I know people around me, and for them, the shamanism and animism was something that was part of their whole life. So it was not something special and not unnormal for them. That was really just their whole life. And so they explained me, and they shared even their experiences with me, which were very similar to the ones that I had. So I kind of more and more got the confirmation that what I was experiencing was real. Like, animals do have spirit. So when I came back to Germany, of course, my whole work as a biologist was changing, because all of a sudden now there was that opportunity and the possibility to talk to animals, to talk to the spirit of animals. I could actually ask them, why are they behaving the way they do? So all my training seemed to be so not important anymore to me. And that's why I had actually really a big crisis about it, because I didn't know how to proceed on that. That's why eventually I decided to, I can have the knowledge of a biologist, a behavioral biologist, at the same time having the knowledge of a shamanic practitioner. So today I was able to fuse both of them, and actually, like, this video talking about my experience and talking about the shamanic worldview on everything. And I do think this will absolutely help nature and us also to treat nature in a more loving way and solve a lot of the problems that we have on an environmental level. But in today's video, I want to mention and I want to emphasize the shamanic methods that can be used to help our pets. Then, as I said, animals have spirits. Basically, the word animal comes from animism, and this means soul, having a soul. Everything has a soul. So that already says it in the English-speaking world. In German, it's not so much, because the word Tier doesn't really relate to that, as far as I know. Maybe I'm wrong. But I like that relation in English. So animism, anima, spirit. And so one thing is that our animals do have a spirit. And just as we humans can lose parts of our soul because something traumatic happened to us, it's the same that can also happen to the animals. I'll give you an example. My cat Fiona, and I talked about this in another video, I got her when she was 2 years old. So I was not her first owner, I was the second one. And I got her from a young lady who said, she doesn't want to have Fiona anymore. Back then, her name was different than Fiona. I renamed her, but she said, I don't want her anymore because I can't take care of her anymore. I have another job now where I have to work also more, and I have to travel more, so I won't be at home as much anymore, and so I can't take care of her in a way I want to, and that's why she wanted to give her up. And so yeah, when I saw Fiona, I was just immediately in love. Like, she was such a cute cat. Her fur, her color, her energy, the way she looked at me, I was just really, yeah, I was lost right from the beginning. So I decided to take her with me. And then at that point, I was maybe, yeah, I don't know, 6 years, 7 years in my shamanic work, but I mainly studied like how to help humans with shamanic methods and not so much animals. But I realized that something was going on with Fiona. I knew that she had some behavioral issues. That was what the previous owner told me. So she was very hyperactive, and she was peeing a lot in different corners. So she couldn't really, I don't know if she couldn't hold it or she was just nervous. So you could tell that something was not quite right with her. And also, she seemed to be very sad. She was a very sad cat and curious sometimes a little bit, but most of the time I just looked at her and I thought, like, what's wrong with you, Fiona? Something happened to you? And eventually I thought, maybe I'll just ask her and maybe I can help her with shamanic methods. And that's what I did. I did a shamanic journey to contact her spirit, and then I immediately got answers from her. She said she doesn't understand why she was given away. She asked me with her eyes almost like, did I do something wrong? Even just telling about this right now, talking about this, it brings up so many emotions. I was so sad for her, and it was really heartbreaking the way she felt about the whole situation. I mean, for that lady, it seemed to be such a quick decision. Okay, I'm giving up that cat because I don't have time for her anymore. And I'm not judging her at all. She had her reasons. But at the same time, it was a horrible and traumatic experience for Fiona, which took a long time for her to really come over with, or to get over with. And so what I did on that journey, I asked if she needs some help with that. And Fiona said, yeah, she would love to have help. So I asked my helping spirits, what if there's something I can do for Fiona? And I said, yeah, we can do a soul retrieval. And if you watch my videos frequently, you already know what a soul retrieval is. It is a very important and useful tool in the toolbox of a shaman, as I like to call it. And in order to bring back parts of our soul that had wandered off because of the traumatic experience. That's something the psychologists call dissociation, when something really bad happened to us. And so a part of us kind of leaves us in order to take that traumatic event with it, so that we don't have to deal with it on a daily level. And the same thing can happen to animals when something like this happens, when they, for example, are given away to another owner, or there was an accident, or different things. And so that's what happened to Fiona. She lost a big part of her soul when this happened, because she was constantly questioning herself, and she didn't understand what she did wrong. And because she liked her home, she liked it like that. And I guess maybe, if that owner would have talked to Fiona, they would have probably find a solution that she could still be with her, and find a way that Fiona would have felt better and not so alone. But anyways, it's the way it is, and I'm very happy that she's with me now. But so yeah, and then I helped her. Well, my spirits helped her with that, and it took a bit. It needed a couple journeys and needed a bit of healing. But eventually, I saw that she was really brightening up. She got happier again. She was way more active. She got much calmer and more relaxed. She also then eventually became an outside cat after, the time of acclimatization. Yeah. And so now she is the most chilled and the most beautiful and, I don't know, sweet little kitty cat that you can think of. And you would never think that she was so traumatized. Like, she is just a different cat now. And I would actually like to show her to her previous owner, and just to tell her, look, this is how she's now, and also what she had go through. And that's why I'm also making this video and talking about this topic, because I want to make aware of the fact that our pets are so deeply emotional intertwined with us. If we, have a bad day, if we are have like we are sick or depressed or anything like that, it always has an impact on our animals. And I don't want to, kind of how you say that, like, I don't want to make you feel bad about it if that would be the case for you. Our animals, I think from what I've saw, they want to help us. They like helping us. They want to be there for us. And sometimes they take over some of our illnesses, some of our heavinesses, our emotions, our grief. But at one point, also them, they sometimes overload themselves and it's too much. And that's why it could be helpful for them also to have a shamanic session where they could receive some healing, which eventually then also would benefit, their pet owners also. So it's a very intertwined interaction between our animals, our pets, and us. And that's something I think many people are not aware of. And, maybe not really treating their animals with the passion and the compassion and the love that they would deserve. And again, I don't want to blame anyone. I just want to make I just want to make you aware of this. And I think that's the first step to also question yourself, how do I interact with my animal? I also always try to really encourage people that when they want to have an animal and, they think of like, I like that. For example, like we had kittens with Fiona, she had kittens, and beautiful little mix between a Norwegian and Siberian forest cat, beautiful kitties. And so I had a couple people here looking at them. It's like, oh, I just love the way they look. And I said, well, that's not enough. Of course they're beautiful, but do you know that they are very active cats? They're very intelligent cats. They need to go outside. They need to run. They need to climb. They'll change their fur in the winter. You have to brush them. You have to make sure that the fur is not like sticking to each other. And there are a lot of things you have to know about this breed if you want one. And it's also a cat breed that, can reach or can live up to 20 years. I think so, right? Well, just in general, you have to be aware of that. You have to take care of this animal for the next 20 years in a way that you'll be able to meet all their requirements to make them happy. Are you able? Even, of course, life can change, things can happen. But I think if your animal is a priority, you will make it happen and work for them too. For us right now, we want to sell our house to find a new place. And of course, it has to be a place where our cats can go outside, because I know that this is the only way to make them really happy for my cats. So yeah, that's why I'm speaking about this so passionately, and also maybe a bit tough love to people, because I don't want to hear this like, but I want to have a Norwegian forest cat and I have only a two-room apartment. I don't care. I just want him. And our pets are not objects that we want to, that we are possessing. And I know that people who are watching my channel, they are, aware of the fact that animals have a spirit, and we should be really careful on how we treat them and how to interact with them, and to make sure that we provide them everything they need in order to be happy. And as I said, they're a family. And how would you treat your sisters and your father and your mom? You wouldn't just say, okay, bye, my child. I'm not taking care of you anymore. You're crying too much now. I'm giving you away. You wouldn't do that probably. So it's the same with the pet too. And so, yeah, how does it work? As I just explained with Fiona, basically how it works with the shamanic work for an animal is that I'm first contacting the spirit of the animal and asking, what's the problem? Do you have a problem? For example, I had a client the other week, and she called me and she said, my cat has vomited a couple times and also has diarrhea. So could you please check on her? So I did, and I asked the animal, and I could clearly see that the animal was not feeling well. It was kind of, like in a weird position, and also said, I don't feel well. And I asked the cat if she knows what happened. And then I saw a picture of her wandering into the kitchen, and then she found like a piece of food underneath the counter, which has been there for a couple of days already. So she ate that food, and then she had a bad stomachache from it. And then I asked my spirits, what can we do in order to make it better? And so on that journey, I found out that there were a couple of things. One thing was called extraction. So we extracted I would say, kind of the bad bacteria, the bad stuff. I can't really explain to you how that really works, but it did work, because later on the owner told me that their cat hadn't been vomiting, maybe one more time, but after that she was way better. She was way more active, and she obviously felt much better, and that was nice to hear. And these experience I have quite a lot with animals, so I can say, without promising anything, but I can definitely see from my experience that the shamanic work is very powerful, helping animals in different levels. And I think it's because the animals don't think about the whole thing. Like when a human comes to me and a person comes to me, now I'm doing a shamanic session with them, and I tell them, oh, we had a soul retrieval and an extraction and this and that, and then they ruminate about it. It's like, oh, what did she say? She had an extraction. Oh, what could that be? I don't know. And then they start thinking about it, and maybe they're even doubting that this is helpful. A cat and a dog doesn't do that. They just, they take it as it comes. They don't think about these things. So I think that's why the shamanic work works really well with them, even better than with humans, because they just don't question it and they don't overthink the whole thing. So yeah, it's definitely a very powerful tool, and I'm very happy to be able to offer that in my shamanic practice to help specific animals. And it's a beautiful way to blend my different interests. I'm still very much interested in biology. I'm still a biologist, and specifically behavioral biologist. But at the same time, once you experienced the connection on a spiritual level with animals, you can't switch that off. Like, I made all these experiences and I can't forget about them. So I know that there is way more than I would ever be able to grasp with my academic background. And that's why I like to fuse both of them, which is very helpful, not only in my work as a biologist, but also in my work as a shamanic practitioner. Yeah, so this video, as I said, was right from my heart, just to bring that message out there, that our pets are just amazing, or just in general, our animals on this earth are amazing beings. They are so loving, they're so helping, they're so supporting us, and we have to, but I think, it would make the world a bit more nicer when we would be aware of that animals do have a spirit, that they want to help us, specifically our pets. They would do everything for their owner to make them happy and to help them. That's why they do take over some of our pains and edges and itches. And, as I said, eventually, sometimes it can be a bit too much. And this is also not something that we should feel bad about it. They want to help us. It's not something that we burden them with. They take over as much as they want. But as I said, it has to go somewhere. And then it's the balance. If they're out of balance, then you can just see it in problems with the behavior and also the health. And sometimes, ending up in issues where the veterinarian is just like, yeah, can't do anything anymore, because the reason is on a different level. It's not they just cut themselves and they can stitch up the wound, that's it. But the cut is deeper. It's on the soul level. And specifically when they had been given away and they had different owners and they were not wanted anymore. I mean, imagine if someone gives you away because you're not wanted anymore. I can't believe of anything worse than this, anything more depressing and sad than someone telling you, you have to go now because I don't want you anymore. You're not any good anymore. And yeah, this is unfortunately happens quite often. And then I can see that in my shamanic practice when these animals are losing their soul parts. And yeah, but as I said, it's possible to bring these soul parts back and reintegrate them into the animal. And I've seen amazing results with that. So I'm very, very blessed and very happy to be able to do this work. That being said, if you think that, maybe a shamanic session, and now people would say, oh, she just told all of this because now she wants to offer her sessions. Partly, of course, it's like this YouTube channel is also there for me to provide my services and for you guys to learn more about the shamanic work. But I'm just saying that because from what I saw, it could be a huge benefit for your animal. As I said, I'm not promising anything, but if you have tried everything else and there's no improvement in the behavior or the health of your animal, maybe you would like to try it with the shamanic work to see if there's something we can do about it. If so, then you can see on my comments and my email address and also my website, and then you can contact me, and yeah, we'll see if I can help your animal, or my spirits and I can help them. All right, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Bye-bye.